I've been fortunate because my own purpose of life has been given to me, by the fact that I'm a Tibetan, who's struggling for the survival of its own culture and the Buddhist tradition that it represents. And, because our identity of many of us Tibetans who are in the outside world is very deeply defined by our struggle. And so that already gives us a deep sense of purpose of who we are. And in my case, that sense of purpose is even further heightened by the fact that out of accident, coincidence or accident, I happen to be His Holiness's interpreter. So, my service to him is a tremendous sense of, source of, as my sense of, purpose. And when I'm able to serve him, it really makes me feel, happy. Because, happiness, a genuine happiness comes from a sense of fulfillment. And sense of fulfillment and joy comes from having a kind of an aspiration that has been fulfilled. And in my own case, I, of course, as a Maya and a Buddhist, the ideal of serving the world is important. It's not just an ideal; it's a real motivating factor, and so that's also a part of what drives me. And in my own day-to-day personal life, I've been very fortunate to be able to make a living, raise family, support my family, but at the same time do it by being fully dedicated to my own preservation of Tibetan culture. I am, my, mother-in-law in the initial stages was teasing me that Jinpa's only motivated, Jinpa's only, how did she put it? Jinpa only gets fired on by, working on dead people's ideas. So it's classical thoughts, So when I'm, editing a Tibetan text and reformatting them and, bringing modern conventions so that the younger generation, new generation of monks can read them in a more efficient manner, that's a large part of work I do. When I'm translating a text, that's when I feel, I could, you're all familiar with this concept of flow. So once I start work, hours go, you're a musician, so you know what it feels like. And that's, from my mother-in-law's point of view, she sees this as a kind of self-indulgence, and maybe she's right. But I genuinely believe that the survival of these texts and survival of these ideas, the insights that are embodied in these texts, are truly beneficial for the world, and they need to be preserved. And that's what fires me. But also, I'm an idea man, I've always loved ideas, trained in philosophy. So that's when I'm the happiest, yeah.
And was everyone disappointed when you decided not to be a monk anymore?
I think people were saddened, but I don't think people were surprised. Because, piety was never really my cup of tea. So, remember, once, some friends of mine from England, when I was at Cambridge, they were raising funds for Tibetan community, and they have a charity called Help Tibet. And one of the innovative fundraising events that they organized was they found someone who was good at riding this penny farthing, this very old English cycle, which has a huge wheel on the back, and then a small wheel in the front. And so someone rode that from Delhi to Dharamsala. It's a crazy guy, a real nutter. But So they raised that fund. They did this, and they had an audience. The whole of Dharamsala turned out to receive them with katas, and of course, there was such a sight. And they had an audience with His Holiness, and then they started talking about His Holiness. They asked questions about what was his everyday like, and when does his day begin. And His Holiness told them that his day starts at 3:30 in the morning, and his meditation. And this friend of mine, whose home I stay whenever I'm in London, she sort of quietly said, I was a monk then, she said, I don't think Jinpa gets up that early. and then His Holiness said, oh, I know. When we are traveling, sometimes I've sneaked into his room, 6 o'clock, still he's in bed. Anyway, but I don't think people were surprised because, because I was, my interest was, I was a good scholar, a good student, very dedicated to my studies and meditation practice and all the rest. But also I was very interested in the world. I was one of the few people who spoke English. For a long time, I've always subscribed to Time magazine, listened to BBC every day, and all of that really turned out to be a tremendous benefit, because when I had the opportunity to serve His Holiness, I was in a position to do it well, because my interest was very wide, and I was very ecumenical in my interest. I was interested in Western psychology, classical music, so I wasn't a real typical monk, in that sense. But on the other hand, this was a perfect background to serve His Holiness, because His Holiness's interest is so broad. The next day he's sitting with a group of scientists talking about minute details of biology or brain, how it works. Next thing he's talking with some environmental scientist about how things are interconnected, and then he's talking with a political scientist. So it was that kind of broad interest I had really made it possible to serve him. So maybe that was what was I meant to do anyway.